Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Friday night class. Thanks for joining. Tonight's class is recorded and there will be a replay available. This is a fast project. We're going to learn a stitch to create what we named tulip chains. And what these are is they're a seed bead and SuperDuo version of a daisy chain that looks more like tulips. And so I think it's a fun design with a lot of versatility and potential that can be made into a lot of different pieces of jewelry. So I'll go ahead and switch my camera and show you guys materials. And just letting that come into focus really quick. And I've got one on the mat that I started earlier, and it's not finished. It's through the step where we come back and add the wire guardian and the 8s, but I was using it to test our colors earlier. So there's that one. Here's a finished one. These are all bracelet length designs so far. But we were talking about at the end of class last week, some of the other things that you can do with this design is stitch it onto something, make it into a choker. It can be an earring. You could put a ear wire and a charm. So many great things that you can do. So let me show you guys the materials. Yeah, so the seed beads that I'm using, lots of different colorways. So you can use any colors you'd like. Start with a tube of SuperDuos in any color that you want your flower to be. I was thinking today we do some red tulips. And then you'll need some size 10 seed beads. I believe 11s would also work. And for the section where these are used, I can show you one a sample, but the size 10s are the beads that are right here. You could also use 8s here. I think it would work. It would be better to move them down to like 3 size 8s, but I was asked that earlier, and yes, I do think it would work. It would look different, but you could use 8s here as well, but I'm using 10s. And then you'll also need some size 8 seed beads, and those go inside of the tulip. And they're what causes the SuperDuos to flare into that fan position, the size 8s. So SuperDuos, size 10s, and size 8s. That's what you need in the beads for creating this project. For the thread, I'm using the Wildfire. I'm using 0.006. And I am going to use size 12 beading needle today. And usually I say, go ahead and use a 10 if you got one. You can do that for this one too, but it's going to be a lot easier with a 12. There's a couple sections where, you have to weave through these tightly linked SuperDuos. And with the larger needle, it's just a little bit harder. Possible, but you might just have to work a little harder at it. So if you've got a 12, go for that one for this class. You'll also need some wire guardians and then some pliers. You'll need some, you'll need some scissors, and these are precision scissors, and then any kind of findings that you like. So it could be lobster claws, a toggle, anything that you'd like to use will work fine. And so I think that is it for materials. That's all the stuff. And so I was going to talk a little bit about the length. This is one of those designs that starts off longer than it's going to be when it's finished. So you'll get through this step here. What I'm showing here is one that doesn't have the final step done on it yet. And so you'll see it still moves a little bit. We come back through and we add an 8 here on the back pass. And that's what makes it tight and makes it hold this shape. It also serves to shorten it. So the length that you have before that will be longer. So I provided kind of like a guesstimate in the handout that says how long it will be with 15. So that's 15 repeats of tulips. And you can adjust it from there to figure out how many tulips to create to get the length you want. All right. And so assuming you're making about 15 or so repeats, you'll want to cut about 70 inches of thread. If 70 inches feels like too long, go ahead and cut a shorter length, and it is possible to add thread. That's no problem. And we can talk about how to do that. But I'm probably going to cut a little bit less for class today, so I'm not running a lot of thread over out off of camera. So I cut a little less. And because we're using 12s, I'm going to show that trick again for how to thread a needle. So I just cut the Wildfire thread, and I've got some pliers here. And what you want to do is just put some pressure on it. And it'll flatten. See how flat I got? And it'll be a lot easier to get that through a size 12 beading needle. So here's my needle. I'm just threading that now. And fold over at a comfortable length. Since there's going to be a lot of thread, you might want to fold it over 12 inches or more, just so that you're not having to pull long lengths through. Okay, and I'm going to get my beads. I'll start with my 10s. And here's the red Tulip SuperDuos. And some size 8s. You don't need many of those, just a few. And you'll want to stop by putting a stop bead on the end. So how to do a stop bead is pick up one of the size 10s and run it down to about a 12-inch tail. And then, so this is the tail side, and this is the working side. Come back through it from the tail side. Oops. There we go. And so that'll create just a little bit of, I mean, you can still move it if you pull on it, but it will stop the beads from sliding off the end and make it just a little easier to get started. And so the next step is to pick up 5 of the size 10 beads. And if you're using size 11s, I do still think 5 is fine. There's not a really big difference in size between them. I think they're easier to work with the 10s personally, just because you can see them better for this camera, but I think 11s are totally fine as well. So if anyone's using 11s, don't sweat that. Here's 3 SuperDuo beads, and just go through whichever hole. Doesn't matter which one right now. Bring that down. And so at this point, there's a little trick you can do to get your tension exactly right for when you start to add the next one and the next one. You don't want them to be, they're not going to be super tight until we do the next step. But you don't want them to be loose where there's a really big gap here. So what I do when I'm making these is I do a little gravity assist. And when I do this next turn, we're going to turn and go through the top hole with that SuperDuo bead. I hold it up when I'm doing that. And I just let gravity help me out. So, and that gets even, more handy as you have more repeats on there, because there's a little bit more weight to pull it down. But now I'm just pinching it. I'm going to flatten it and pull. So see, now I've got no gap here. And by no means is it tight yet, but it's at least, connected. And when you make these turns to the SuperDuos, they tend to lock the thread in from wiggling a little bit. So that's also kind of helpful. So I just picked up an 8. Sorry, I didn't mention that, but I just picked up a size 8 bead. And I'm exiting from the top hole of this SuperDuo. And I'm just going to go through the next one's top hole. And I'm not worrying about which side it's on at the moment. It's going to correct itself. There's that. Pick up one more size 8 bead. I'm going through the top hole of the next SuperDuo bead. I'm just going to move those out of the way a little bit. They are getting in the way. When I do that, it's just going to move it right up next to the other one. And so there's the first tulip. And we need to get over here. This is where having that size 12 beading needle is really helpful to me, because I have to go through each of these, and they're pretty snug together now. So what I end up doing is I just go to the first one. I'm turning. So this is the top hole of the SuperDuo, and I'm just turning to go through the bottom hole of that same bead. If it'll let you go through two, go for it. If it won't, go through the first one by itself. I'm usually able to get through two, and then I have to go through one by itself. And there you go. There's one repeat done. So we're just going to do that again a few more times. 5 size 10s. Here's 3 SuperDuos. And again, I'm using gravity to help me. I just kind of picked it up. And I'm turning first. So this is the bottom hole of the SuperDuo. I'm turning and going through the top hole in the other direction. And that's a little loose, so I'm going to make it tighter. There we go. And now I need an 8. Going through the top hole of the next one. Here's another 8. And the top hole of the last one. And same thing again, I want to go through all 3 of those SuperDuos from the bottom. So here I'm exiting from the top hole. And I'm going to turn and go through the bottom 3 here. All right, and it'll already start to take that shape. And if it's got the right tension on it, it'll do so really easily. If it's a little bit loose, that's still okay, because when we come back and add the 8 here in the next step, that will tighten it up even more. So I just added 5 size 10s and 3 SuperDuos. And that same thing again, where I'm going to use gravity to help me out, picking it up and turning. Grab another 8. It wants to bring all the SuperDuos with me. There we go. There we go. Here's another 8. I'm going through the top hole of the next SuperDuo bead. Oops. I got it looped around itself. Sorry, guys. There we go. And same thing again, I want to go through the bottom hole now of all 3 of those. So I'm exiting from the top, and I want to turn and go through these 3. Okay, let's do one more like that for some symmetry, and then I'll show you the step of going back. And then we'll have time to do that again from the beginning, I think. So there's 5. Here's 3. And then lifting it up. And turning and going through the top hole of that same bead. Pull tight, and then grab those 8s. Grabbing 1 8, going through the top hole of the next one. One more 8. And now I'm going to go through the bottom hole of these 3. Yeah, and I'm only able to get through 2 at a time. So there's the first 2 and going through that last one. Okay, and so if you're making a full length, if you're making it a bracelet, you would want to do that 15 times. And once you've done 15 of them, you'll need to grab 5 more of the size 10s. And then I'm going to grab a wire guardian. And again, the wire guardians, those are these little, they say #1 on them, and they're in the Michaels wall over by the findings. But they're kind of a really handy item. I use them a lot for so many different things. I have an little open container here, so I'll keep that one for my showing people what the box looks like. Here's one. And so to create kind of like a little beautiful embellishment, and also to give you a wider, spot for the wire guardian to sit, I pick up another bead before going through the wire guardian. So another 10. I'm going through it, and then I'm going to go through the other side and pull tight. Now I get one more of the size 10s. And here I'm going to skip the first one. So skipping this one here, and I'm going to go through these 5. And so what you'll get is like a little side-by-side positioning of those 10s that we added there. And it gives it somewhere to sit, which is kind of nice. And so I want to reinforce that connection before I go back through and add all the 8s, especially since, on a full length one, you'd have to go through all the way. So we want to reinforce it now. And turning through SuperDuos is really hard. So what I do to get back up here is, do you see this little thread connection that's over our SuperDuo from when we went from the top to the bottom hole? You can go under that with your needle. And so what I do is, and it's tight, so you gotta try not to poke yourself while doing it, which I did, but just kind of going under the thread bridge. And then come back up through all those beads again. So far I've gone through those first 5. And I want to go through the wire guardian again and the beads that are under it. It doesn't matter which side. There's one side, turning and going down through the other. Okay, and so you could repeat that step one more time if you wanted to. You can go down through these 5, pick up that thread again, and come back up through. But honestly, I only did it twice on my designs, and they're pretty solid. This is pretty strong thread. And you might also notice that second pass is really tight. It is possible to get a third one through it, but if you feel good about this, you can just do 2, and I think it's just fine. Okay, so from here, the good news, we do not have to go through these SuperDuos again, which is really good news. You'll see when you're working this, it's really challenging to turn. But if you pick up an 8, and you just skip the tulip here and just go through these next 5, you get that accordion effect. And it really, it really holds its shape surprisingly well. And the more tug you give it, the tighter it'll be. And to show you what I mean, it really just depends on how tightly you're pulling it that day. So look at the difference here. Tension matters. They're mostly the same, but you can see, like, I got really overzealous over here. I put some real tension on it. So you can change the length of this and make it even shorter by pulling too tightly. It also makes a difference, the coating of your size 8. So this size 8 is like one of those matte finished, like metallics, and it's going to be a little bigger than this barley ivory that I've got here. So it's also going to create a tighter connection because this is a smaller bead. So something to think about, something to play with, and see what different coatings look like and shapes you can make. But yes, it does kind of matter how hard you pull here for how tight and how compressed the accordion is going to be. And yes, I did call it an accordion for you, Millie. I can hear you laughing somehow. I don't know how. I actually really wish I could hear you guys. This would be fun. So I'm just going through these, I'm going through these next 5 here. I got that connection there. And again, I'm going to pull it kind of tight just so it matches what I did on the first one. But see, adding that 8, it gives it that pop that you see. And it gets even like, I feel like it gets more noticeable the further down the chain you go. There's another 8. And all I'm doing is just going through these 5s. There we go. Okay, so I reached where my stop bead was. And see, look at how tight that got. And it got much shorter. Pulled off the stop bead. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side now. I'm grabbing a 10, grabbing a wire guardian, and then just going to go around the side. Now on this side we have another opportunity because we've got a tail that can be used to weave through one more time. I picked up another 10, and then coming all the way down to those 5s, the 5 10s. I like having the tail here because then I can tighten up with it. Kind of works. And so at this point you could switch to your tail thread, use it to go around, and then just weave in. I'll show what that looks like really quick. I'm going to flatten this side. Okay, going up. So the weaving in stage, it's a little boring, but I feel like it makes a difference in the quality of a piece. So I always kind of take my time with it. Oops. All right. And that's pretty much it. If I was going to weave in now, what I might do, since I have 2 threads here, yeah, you could knot it if you really wanted to. So it's just such a fast make that if you ever had to rebuild it, you just make it again. So if you feel like doing a knot here, you can. I don't feel like you need to because we've got these SuperDuos to go through as something to weave in. You can also go through the 8, come over here, use this to turn, come back. And that's kind of what I did on my samples. I didn't want to go through my SuperDuos again. So I went through the 8s. I went through the 10s. And then I just used, and then there was a lot more repeats to do this to on the others, the longer samples, but see, I'm going under that thread bridge that's on the SuperDuo here. And then just turning around. I might even do that again on this one over here. And that'll give you a pretty tight connection, and you won't have to tie a knot. Here's the other one. Yeah, so super fast, super easy design. And there's that extra pass to those beads. All right. Okay, and now I'm gonna grab some scissors. They are here. I know they are. There. And this is the one I just finished weaving in. I'm gonna trim it by pushing down, pulling up. And then same thing with this side. I would do the same thing, weave it in, You could reinforce that again if you wanted to. But that's it in a nutshell. I'm thinking since it's really, really good timing, I can show that all again, and then I have another sample that's a bit longer. We can work on that one.
Hi, Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
I'm monitoring the sidebar, and your regular beaders, they get it. They understand exactly what you're doing. But we have
Great.
some new people here tonight, and they've never seen the SuperDuo.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're a little bit confused about top and the bottom of a two-hole bead. So when you demonstrate it this time, maybe just put a little more emphasis of where that SuperDuo is sitting.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that's good to know. And it's great. This is a great class for new beaders because I feel like we have some breathing room to really get more detailed, you know. So that's great. Actually, I already have enough SuperDuos. What I need is thread. Where'd my thread go? Here it is. Okay, so the thread I'm using still it's the 0.006. It's the Wildfire. And on a full length bracelet, we were saying in the handout to cut about 70 inches or so. I'm not cutting that much here now because I'm not doing a full length, but that's how much you would want if you were going to make one that had 15 tulips on it. And I'm just using these precision scissors to cut the thread. I've got some chain nose pliers here. These are really great for flattening. You get a little flat edge there. It makes it a lot easier to thread your needle.
Danielle, would you use 0.008 thread?
You know what? This is one time where I would probably not. Well, okay, so maybe if you switched these 10s to 8s. But if you're going to use 10s or 11s, the 0.06, because there's as many as 4 passes through these ones on the end, and there's 2 passes through all the center ones, maybe 3 if you use them to weave in. It's going to start getting so tight with a 0.8 that you'd have to use chain nose pliers to pull through all your connections. So I'm thinking 6 would be better. But the truth is I didn't try it. So if you want, that's my guess is that it would be problematic. Okay, so I'm gonna show the SuperDuos just for a second for our new folks. They're kind of an oval shape and they have a really cool design. They're pinched on the side. So each side is kind of pinched with a little indentation. And it makes them sit in fan shapes if you string them. We have another class we did where we put these in a circle. And we have another class coming up next week where we're going to make an additional kind of like a sun ray with them. That's really fun. So I think they are the most versatile bead out there because you can just do so much with them. But they do have 2 holes. They're shaped like an oval. There's like an indentation, like a little pinch spot located around each of the holes. So you see, you can get them to do so many neat shapes. They also make it possible to do turns in your beadwork, which is really cool. So here whenever I say I'm stepping up or I'm turning, what I mean is I'm going through, see how I'm going through one hole here? I'm hoping that's clear, but so there's one hole. And then I turn and go through the top. And pull tight. And on this one, it's moving, but see how we have the opportunity here to go through and change direction. So yeah, super versatile bead. One of my favorite beads. And so that's what we're doing when we start making these tulip chains. What I'm doing first here is putting a stop bead on so that things will sit on my thread without falling off for those first few repeats. And to create a stop bead, you'd slide this down until you're about 12 inches from the bottom of your thread, and then come back through that same bead again. Okay, and when you pull tight, it's locked in there. You can still move it, but not much. And so for this pattern, we just kind of have 5 5 size 10s. Bring those down. But I just want to encourage everyone to go ahead and experiment with that if you want to. Somehow I only ended up with 3. It must have fallen. You can change up the counts and see what it looks like. I liked the 5 when I was creating this one because the way that it sits, I wanted to accentuate that kind of like zigzag. And so I went with a few extras, but you could make them closer together and this stitch would still work just fine. You could also try using like 3/8 or, you know, 6 size 11s or, you know, anything really. The great thing about bead weaving is you can try so many different ideas and most of the time they're going to work. So there's 5. Here's 3 SuperDuos. And again, the first time I'm picking them up, all I'm doing is just going through one hole and I'm not worrying about which side. They're the same on both sides and until I do my turn, it doesn't really matter. So I just went through the first hole, whichever one I could pick up easiest, and that's all I've done so far there. But in this step, using some help from gravity by picking it up, I'm turning through the top hole. So there's the top hole of the bead. And pull down. And that should lock right next to the former one. And now I'm going back in this direction, which is helpful for making this little tulip. So I went through the top hole of the next one. And here's a new size 8. Ooh, I've got some sunshine, guys. Let's make that go away. There we go. Okay, and then another 8. I'm going through the top hole of the next one. And so there's the first step. Then I need to go back through. So I want to be exiting over here, right? And currently I'm exiting over here. So to get there, I'm doing the same thing that we did here, turning and going back through that bottom hole. And I continued through the next one, just, you know, because I could. It'd be a little tough to go through the third. So I haven't done that yet, but I am going to go through the bottom hole of that next one after I pull this one through. And there it is. So that's the first step. And then you would just repeat that a few more times. Or if for a full length bracelet, you'd make 15 of those. Got 3 more. There's that gravity assist again. And another thing I notice about when I'm working this is it tends to go in the right direction, even just at this first step. See, it's automatically putting them opposing each other. Through the next one, and then turn and go through the bottom hole here. Getting through as many as I can. I think it'll let me go through those 2. And there's that one. And so 5 more. And so the many things this can become. I was looking at this design with a couple things in mind when I first started making it. I actually thought I was going to put more SuperDuos up here. And I tried that, but it left you know, it left them open at the top, but it still looked really cool. So that's something else that you can try and see if you like the look of it. Maybe we can try it now and just see. I actually really enjoy just playing to see what, what happens if I do this, or what happens if I do that. And it's so cool. Some of the ideas that you can come up with just playing with your beads, just sit down and just let yourself not worry about what a pattern says. And so in this case, when I got to that spot, I felt like this was just too much open here and it didn't look as cool. But then later today, I had another idea. I was like, what if you put a crystal there? How cool would that be? The only tricky part is you'd have to get back there somehow. You'd have to travel. So you'd have to come back through here, go through these three, come up, turn, go through all those again in the bottom, and then you have to turn, come up here, add your crystal, come here, down. You could probably turn here and then continue. So that's an advanced thing you could think about if there's an advanced beader out there looking at what else can I do? It's not like a butterfly. It's, lots of great things you can do and try. I'm going to leave that there and just keep going and call it a butterfly in the pattern. Another thought I had just now was if you made this a different color, it would look like the center of the butterfly, and this could be its wings. And I also, so earlier today, I started getting ideas for what else this could, what other types of jewelry it could be. And of course, the natural idea would be to make a choker. So this is what I have toward a choker. And it is not finished, but it's something that I hope to finish soon. And I measured out based on these, I think you would need 35 tulips to make a choker that's about, I don't know, 14 to 14 and a half inches, depending on your tension. So your tension is going to make a really big difference when you start stitching it up. But the cool thing is if it's off by a little bit, you could always just like put a chain on it or a ribbon or some suede and tie that, at the back of the neck. You won't see it. So if you made even just 30 repeats, it'd be plenty, maybe even a little less. Just test it as you're going and see, hey, this is long enough now. I like it. But if I had to guess, I would say about 35. Okay, so I'm gonna just do, I'll do another repeat on this one. And we can see, putting the wire guardian on one side again, since we're doing so great for time. There's my butterfly, I'm leaving him there. And we'll make another tulip with this one. Sorry about that glare. I'm not sure why I'm getting so much light. And there's, Oops, I forgot my trick. So if you work this flat on the mat at this stage, yeah, it's getting really bright. You know what I'm gonna do? Okay, everyone close your eyes because it's gonna be really bright for a second. I'm gonna flip this the other way. Ah. It's still there. It's the holes in my blind. For real. Okay, let's move that over. There we go, almost. I'm not used to this whole sunshine thing. There we go. Perfect, okay, that's way better. Okay, so just picking this up again. I worked it flat on the mat earlier to see what would happen, and it was really loose. So I think this one little trick here will save all of the, all the tension headaches that come up. Picking up an 8 and going to the top hole of the next bead. There you go. And pick up an 8. Going to the next one. There's a flower there. And then I'm turning and going through the bottom hole of that SuperDuo. And there it is. Okay, and so I'm going to pick up 5 more of these. Plus one more because I'm going to go through the wire guardian. To one side here. And the other side. Another 10. Skipping that first one. And then just going to go through all those other 5 ones. 5 10s. And if you're working without a wire guardian, you could just do a loop of beads here, but instead of the wire guardian, just do 4 more 10s. You could also just go straight through a jump ring and come back down through this bar. Whatever is easiest, it'll all work. And so I want to be able to get back up here. So I'm using that thread bridge that's on the side of my SuperDuo, the one that we created when we traveled from the top hole to the bottom hole. I'm just using that as a way to turn, went under it. And I'm just going to come back up through all of those beads. And I've done a really good job of making it tight. So there we go. Oops, I only got through the bead, not the wire guardian there. Here we go. Going around the other side, come down through here. And see, it's already getting really tight just on this pass, but something I forgot to mention earlier is if you ever notice that your needle is just like, no way, I'm not going through those beads, it's probably because you've pierced your thread. And the best thing to do is go ahead and just bring the needle back out and try to wiggle it a little bit. I push up on my needle as I'm going through the beads to avoid going through the thread. So I'm just kind of pushing along the top. For loomers out there, it's that same thing you're doing with, when you're looming to avoid going through your warp threads with your weft. It's that same trick, pushing up when you're going through. But that said, this going through these is pretty tight on that last pass, and it really gets pretty solid there. All right, so we did that. Now we're going to add our 8s. And this is where the magic happens with making that shape hold. I picked up one size 8, and I'm exiting from the bottom of these 5, the bottom size 10 in that little row of 5. And I want to go through these next 5. I'm just skipping all those SuperDuos. I'm just going to go through here. And when you do that, the 8 will sit at the bottom and it will cause that little shape to form. And the tighter you pull, the more scrunched up the like accordion or blinds or a zigzag will get. There goes that one. Another 8. Let's see if it'll let me go through all of them. Yay. And the last one. And I'm being careful here not to go through my stop bead. I avoided going through that, so I'm going to pull it off. But here's another chance to tighten. You can use your working tail threads, pull them apart. Stop bead. Oops. Okay, and then wire guardian on this side. Same thing we did before. We're just going to pick up a 10 and just go through one side. Bring that down, go through the other side. Oh, I like to, I always forget to mention this, but I like to pinch the 2 sides of the wire guardian to make it tighter and to keep the, I guess, kind of guide the thread into the well. The well is this top part of the wire guardian. It's easy to get your thread to sit in there if you do that. And here's another 10. I'm going to skip that first one and go through the next 5. And there you go. There's one repeat done. And so since I already have some tail here, what I usually do on mine is I just switch my needle over here go around it, bring it back down, and then I weave in the same way we did before. I avoid going through the SuperDuos because it's very challenging to get through them after they're tight like that. So I just go through my 8, go through the next 5, and on a longer piece, I might go through a few spaces because I need to weave the tail in too. So I would leave this open for my tail, meaning I'm not going to turn yet. I would keep going to like over here and use that for my, weaving in turn. Keep going. And that's exactly what I did on the samples. With my first, with my working thread here, my first weaving in, I traveled about 3 down, turn, and then use the, using the thread bridge to go back through. So here's once, went underneath it. This also makes those connections on the end tight. That's cool because when you're clasping, when people are putting this on and off, the most pressure is going to be put on those sides. A little extra tension doesn't hurt. There's that. And then I'm just going to turn one more time. Oh, I did a good job on that one. I can't even get under it. There we go. One more trip through. And again, I'm kind of pushing up on my needle. That's why it's so bent. It's because I'm trying not to pierce the thread that's inside of those beads. Otherwise, I'll never get it through. There's that. And yeah, this is where I would trim it. Pull tight. And so what I would do next here, looks like 348. Yeah. I would do the same thing here. I would go around the wire guardian. Down here, I'd go through this 8, through these, and use that to turn, come back through, use that to turn, come back through and trim there. Do you guys want to see that? There is time.
Danielle, it's Carmi.
Hey.
Because we do have some new people, they may not be familiar with the findings that you actually did use to wrap it up. Okay. Or maybe you had to add a little bit of wire if you were going to do the choker. Is that something you could demo in the rest of the time?
Yeah, I can show it on, actually I have a finished one ready to go. So here's one that's all done, but it doesn't have any clasps on it yet. And you can use any clasp you want. What I have handy here is one of these finding packs, and it has all the jump rings you need, lobster claw. So just really handy to have around. It comes with different size jump rings. So if you're using this findings pack, what you'll see inside are some really smallish ones, some mediums, and some really big ones. For this dainty bracelet, I'm not going to use these really big ones. I'm going to stick with the small, and I'm going to make an adjustable chain by using a few of these. So you can add as many as you like. I'll probably just put on a few. And then I'm using the smaller, this is the smaller jump ring, the smallest one, to put my lobster claw on here. So here's my, sorry, I'm off camera over there. Sorry about that. That's going to be my adjustable chain. And this is going to be my connection over here. So for tools, I do have some tools I like for jump rings. And I like to use these kind of square nose, flat nose, square nose pliers. And then there's another called the bent chain nose pliers, where these are not required. You can easily do a jump ring without them, but I have developed a habit of really enjoying using these, because check out how easy this is. And so you can see what you're doing, because if you're using some regular chain nose pliers, you have to do this. And I know I'm off camera with my hand, but if you could see my wrist and what I'm doing with my wrist, it's not comfortable for me to do that. This is super comfy. See, this is just ergonomic. So that's why you'll see me go through the trouble of pulling those out when I do these kind of connections. Just easily kind of close that. And so there's that side on with the small jump ring. And I come over here and just really quickly throw a bunch of chain on. Whenever I'm making chain, I don't connect it first. I'll lock one up, get that good click going. And what I'm doing is I'm actually bending them, working it back and forth until it's sealed. And you can even run your finger on it and see that there's no burring, and you know you've closed your jump ring really well. It also makes a really satisfying little clicking sound. You know you've got it. So again, I opened it laterally there. I'm going to pick up that last one that I closed. Get my click. And I'm testing it. Yeah, it's good. There's another one. Pick up one of those. Got a little bit of a chain going. And alternatively, you could just add some nice, cable chain. And if you're trying to find online cable chain that will simulate this look, you'll need to get 5 or 6 millimeter cable chain. Here's my last one. I opened it, picking it up. I put it on the jump ring. There we go. Something also really fun to do, especially on a cute design like this, is to put a little bead on your last jump ring. And if you want to do that, you can use size 8 seed beads. Size 6 seed beads will also be great. I think you could even put a SuperDuo on there. Let's see. It might work. The SuperDuo is a little tight, but I think an 8 will. So see, I put a little 8 on there. And, other than looking kind of cute, another reason to do something like that is to put a little weight on the end. So then when you go to put on your bracelet, it's going to force the chain to come down. And it's just a very small amount of weight, but it makes a difference.
So Danielle, the best thing about you adding this chain is if someone does want to make the choker and it's a little short, they can add a little bit more chain. But for anyone who's selling their jewelry, if you've got a large wrist customer, they'll use the chain, and the person with a smaller wrist will just use the chain as a dangle.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something to think about when you're selling your work is creating, I often create all adjustable closures like that. That way I can sell it to anybody who likes it. And it also makes it, just really fun. I think it looks nice. Before I switch my camera, we've got a few minutes. I was thinking, should I bring next week's class up to the mat?
I think you should.
Yeah, okay. Here's next week's class. And while we're talking SuperDuos, this is the an extension of what you can do. I wouldn't call this an advanced class because the thread path is really simple. You'll be shocked at how easy this is. It looks all complicated, but it wasn't. It was really easy to do. And I designed the thread path in a way that we avoid going through too many SuperDuos at once, which is very handy if you're going to demo it live, let me tell you. But there's also 2 chain styles. So in the handout, we focus on just putting some cute chain here, which makes it fast and easy to demo and also easier to make a bunch of them. But if you wanted to just go all out, you could put a cute chain. And in the handout, it does talk about how to do that. If we could time a class next week, I'm hoping to at least walk through it once, but it's sketched out pretty nicely in the handout with some diagrams. So yeah, so there's that. And that color, everyone asked me, what is that color? So that is this color. It is called Purple Suede Metallic. I think it's my favorite SuperDuo color. I'm torn because I really love the other one, which is the pink suede, but yeah, so that's what this is. And that's next week on Friday. I'll switch my camera. Figure out where I put that. There we go. Hi guys. Yeah, and so the necklace, you can see another little view of it here for next week. And today's bracelet is here. And so I hope you guys enjoyed class tonight, and I had fun. I love having Friday nights with you guys. And I just want to say thank you, and I'll see you next week. All right. Bye.